In case you've been out of the loop for the past couple of months, Concord is a brand new 5v5 first-person hero shooter for PS5 and PC. It's being developed by Firewalk Studios, a relatively new game studio, with Concord being their first game, and it's being published by PlayStation, who requires no introduction. Concord caused quite the stir online when it was officially revealed during PlayStation's May State of Play. A lot of people quickly dismissed it as a generic and soulless attempt at a hero shooter and considered its reveal trailer a Guardians of the Galaxy ripoff. The reception of the game's reveal didn't get any better for Firewalk when it was revealed that the game was going to cost $40 to play, since many believed it was going to be free to play based on what they had seen. I watched PlayStation State of Play live on my Twitch channel, and I felt like I was one of the only people who was optimistic about Concord. There are a couple of reasons the game piqued my interest when I saw it. The first is that I'm actually a really big fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, so the parallels people were drawing between them and Concord weren't a negative for me. The other reason, which I think is the core reason, is that a hero shooter I'd invested over 2,000 hours into, Rogue Company, basically kicked the can this year, so I was already looking for a game to fill the hero shooter shaped void in my head. About a week after Concord's official reveal, it was announced that the game was going to have 2 beta periods before launch. The first was a closed early access beta, which was going to be available for people who pre-ordered the game on PS5, Steam, or Epic Games. Those who pre-ordered the game, however, were also given 4 beta codes on the platform they chose, which they could give to their friends to allow them to play the early access beta without having to pre-order. When I heard about this, I was ecstatic. While I was optimistic and wanting to learn more about the game, my friends were a bit more uncertain about Concord. So I pre-ordered the game and gave my codes to some of my friends in anticipation of the first beta. As of this recording, it's been a week since the open beta period for Concord ended, and I wanted to sit down and give my honest thoughts about a game that I personally think has the potential to be my favourite multiplayer game of the year. Before I start though, I do want to add some disclaimers due to the nature of how some people feel about Concord. As you can tell from my subscriber count, this is not a sponsored video. I'm making this out of my own passion for the game, and all of the opinions in this video are entirely my own. Furthermore, it's important to remember that it's okay if your opinions are different to mine. Everyone is going to feel differently about everything, and that's okay. I know that may seem pretty obvious, but it doesn't hurt to reiterate. Anyway, without further ado, let's dive into my thoughts on the beta for PlayStation's upcoming live service shooter, Concord.
Enemy! Take them down!
The first thing that really stood out to me in Concord is the visual and oral presentation of the game. When you first boot it up, you're greeted by an opening cinematic and 2 of what Firewalk calls cinematic vignettes. These are CG cutscenes that delve into the story and lore of the Concord galaxy and the playable characters, who are called Freegunners. The cinematic vignettes are incredibly well done in my opinion. The quality of the animation, the voice acting, and the motion capture are top notch. While the first 2 of these CG cutscenes don't tell us too much about the Freegunners themselves, they do tell us about the lore of the Concord galaxy, and I'm personally very invested. I'm a big fan of the game's sci-fi aesthetic, from the menus and the music that accompanies them, to the maps and Freegunners. The main menu's musical themes are very atmospheric, which is perfect when you consider that the main menu has you inside the North Star, the spaceship that our Freegunners travel in. Meanwhile, the themes heard in gameplay blend the main menu's atmospheric elements with high-tempo beats, fitting for when you're about to get into combat. And it's no wonder that I like Concord's music. It turns out that Daniel Pemberton, the man behind the score for the Spider-Verse movies, is the composer for Concord. Small world, I guess. Or should I say, small galaxy. The maps, which are all situated on different planets, are extremely diverse and bursting with colour, which makes them a real treat for the eyes. And the Freegunners' designs, from their colour palettes to their sizes, are just as distinct. After the game's initial reveal, a lot of people commented that the game didn't look different enough compared to Guardians of the Galaxy, but I think the visual designers at Firewalk have done an excellent job of making the Concord universe their own. Each of the Freegunners have their own weapons and kit elements, and they look, feel, and sound completely different from each other. I personally think the audio design for the weapons in Concord is among the best I've heard in a video game. Whether it's the rapid burst fire of Dawes or Kipps' weapons, or the slowly increasing roar of Amari's minigun, every weapon feels like it had a lot of love poured into it from both the audio and visual designers. And the animations, oh my god, the character animations in Concord are nothing short of incredible. Not only are they extremely fluid and beautiful to watch, but they're also plentiful. Each character has their own movement animations, dodge animation, drop-in animation, and weapon reload animation, and I never got tired of seeing them. One of my favorites is the default drop-in animation for Vale, the sniper Freegunner. As a brief primer, drop-in animations are what play when Freegunners drop down from the shuttle and land on the map before the start of a game or round. What I like so much about Vale's is that unlike the other humanoid characters, her body doesn't lower as much when she lands, and this is because she doesn't have organic legs and feet. They're robotic. I live for attention to detail like this, and it really adds to the overall presentation of Concord.
Call it the healer's touch.
When it comes to the gameplay of Concord, people seem to be pretty divided. On one side, players believe that the movement feels too slow and clunky, and that the TTK, or time to kill, is too high. For these players, the combination of slow movement and slow gunfights makes Concord hard to enjoy. On the other side, the side that I stand on, players don't seem to mind the movement in TTK too much, and some even enjoy these aspects of the game. While I do agree that the movement could benefit from being a little bit faster for some characters, especially the tanky ones like One-Off and Amari, I adjusted to the movement speed and longer TTK of Concord fairly quickly, and I think it's a nice change of pace. I found myself having to commit to gunfights more often because of the TTK, and it made playing heal-focused Freegunners even more satisfying. In my opinion, the gunplay in Concord feels fantastic, and that's really important, especially considering an element of the game that I'll mention later. The guns were very responsive and fluid to use. There were only a few weapons I didn't enjoy using as much, and it wasn't because they were necessarily bad, just that they didn't quite fit my style of play. I know this because I did go up against the Freegunners who use those weapons, and most of the players behind them definitely knew how to use them. Another gameplay element that divided some players, but I personally loved, was the movement beyond walking, sprinting, and crouching. Depending on the size and sometimes role of the Freegunner, the type of movement tools available to you are extremely diverse. For example, Anchors, the tanks of the game, are the only Freegunners who don't have access to a dodge. On top of that, they can only jump once, while the rest of the cast have a double jump or even a triple jump. Amongst those characters, there are even more variations. One can dodge 3 times without needing to wait for the dodge cooldown, and 2 can dodge while in the air. It's little things like these that really help to set each Freegunner apart. I've already touched on them briefly, but I want to dive deeper into the Freegunners themselves, as well as the very interesting crew system that Concord uses. There are 16 total Freegunners at launch, and all of their kits go like this. 1 weapon, some have 2, 2 abilities, and 1 to 2 passives. Notice something missing from that list? That's right, there are no ultimates in Concord, and I genuinely think that's a good thing for the game. It's one less thing to have to worry about balancing, and it forces players to rely more heavily on characters' base kits, rather than waiting for a cooldown to finish so they can release a super powerful move. Plus, since all of the Freegunners have 2 abilities they can use rather than 1, they don't feel like they're missing something from not having ultimates. The lack of ultimates is also the main reason I believe Concord having good guns is even more important than it would be for other hero shooters. I gave every Freegunner in the game a try during the beta, and my personal favourites were, in no particular order, Door, Teo, Lennox, Jabali, Itzy, Amari, and Starchild. Going back to mechanics for a second, one of my favourites is something the devs at Firewalk have dubbed sloops. Sloops is a contraction of skill loops, and refers to how each Freegunner regains charges of their abilities. Rather than making every Freegunner have timed cooldowns after using an ability, like most hero shooters do, the devs have created different ways that an ability can be regained, based on a Freegunner's intended playstyle. For example, Lennox, wielding 2 revolvers as his choice of weapons, is a pretty aggressive Freegunner. As such, his 2 abilities are regained after use by trying to take down his enemies. His self-healing ability is instantly regained every time he eliminates an opponent, and whenever Lennox does that, the enemy also drops a blue object that, when picked up, gives him a new charge of his second ability, an exploding throwing knife. Of course, there are some abilities in Concord that have a timed cooldown, but they're usually only seen on characters who play a bit more defensively. Door, for example, is a defensive field medic, whose abilities are a healing pad and a dome shield. Door starts off with 2 healing pads, and when he's used both charges, he needs to hold the ability button for about 5 seconds to get one back. His dome shield, on the other hand, has a timed cooldown, although I can't quite remember how long the cooldown is. I'm a really big fan of the sloop system, because it makes playing each character even more satisfying. The last Freegunner specific mechanic I want to touch on in this section is also a unique one. Variants. Variants are essentially character slots for each Freegunner that give them a unique bonus, and they're typically more powerful than a character's passive, but not as impactful as an ability. During the beta periods, we had access to every Freegunner's default variant, as well as one extra variant for 3 of the characters. Teo, your somewhat average soldier, Lennox the revolver-toting space outlaw, and Hamar, the crossbow-wielding fire mystic. To give you an idea of how variants work, I'll explain Teo's 2 variants. His default variant gives him a temporary speed boost every time he finishes a dodge, which is really good for allowing him to rotate to another objective, and to get out of or get back into the action faster. His second variant, however, gives him extra ammo in both his battle rifle and his pistol, as well as extra charges for his cluster grenade and smoke grenade abilities. So, in a match, you could choose to play as either variant 1 Teo with the speed boost after dodges, or variant 2 Teo with extra ammo and ability charges. It's a very unique mechanic that's made even more interesting when you consider what is probably Concord's most unique mechanic, the crew system. Sit tight, this is gonna take some explaining. The crew system in Concord allows you to create your own rosters of 12 Freegunners, plus 4 backups chosen at random, that you use during a match. In a normal hero shooter, there wouldn't really be any point to this, you'd just have all of the characters on the select screen to pick from before a match, and the default crew that you start with is exactly that. However, once you hit level 6, you gain the ability to use the crew system and learn about yet another mechanic, crew bonuses. Concord lightly discourages picking one character and sticking with them by providing little bonuses that you can gain by playing as Freegunners from multiple roles during the course of a match. These bonuses are granted after death, and only unique ones stack. Playing as one role, then swapping to a different Freegunner in the same role only gives you one of its crew bonus, not 2. There are 6 roles that Freegunners fall into in Concord: Anchors, Breachers, Haunts, Tacticians, Rangers, and Wardens. Each of these roles has a specific crew bonus attached to them. The Anchor crew bonus is increased healing, the Breacher crew bonus is reduced dodge cooldown, the Haunt crew bonus is increased movement speed, and so on. After deaths in respawn modes, and between rounds in single life modes, you get taken back to the character select screen so that you can take advantage of crew bonuses. Trust me, I know this system sounds a bit wild on paper, but when you're actually using it in the game, it's fairly intuitive and very fun. Playing as multiple Freegunner roles over the course of a respawn mode and powering up every time I swapped roles was incredibly satisfying for me. But wait, there's more! Remember how I said that in a normal hero shooter, being able to make your own rosters is kinda pointless? Well, the crew system really shines in the single life game modes of Concord. This is because in single life modes, when you win a round while using a particular Freegunner slot, that slot becomes unavailable to use for the rest of the match. For the default crew roster, where everyone is available once, this means that the Freegunner you just won with is off limits to you for the rest of the match. But because you're able to create your own rosters, you can actually choose to have multiple slots of the same character on your crew, which allows you to get around this problem. Now, for obvious reasons, there are limitations in place when it comes to creating your own crews. You have to have at least 5 unique Freegunners, for instance, and you can only have 3 duplicates of the same variant of a Freegunner. Speaking of, this is also where variants come into play during character selection. You could choose to have multiple or just one of each variant of your favourite Freegunners, or mix and match by having unique Freegunners in all of your slots, but some of them are variant 1 while others are variant 2. So yeah, I know that was a lot of information to process at once, but I really enjoy this mechanic, and I've seen plenty of beta players who also enjoy it. I can still see why some people would be turned off by it though, mainly because its full potential is only realised in single life modes, not in respawn modes, and because the mechanic could be explained better in game. Concord features 6 different game modes at launch, separated into 3 different playlists. In the Brawl playlist, you'll find Takedown and Trophy Hunt. Takedown is Team Deathmatch, while Trophy Hunt is Kill Confirmed, classics that are good for when you just want to mindlessly eliminate the enemy team. In the Takeover playlist, you'll find Area Control and Signal Chase. Area Control is a spin on domination, where instead of each objective you hold granting 1 point every few seconds, you have to be holding at least 2 objectives, and when you are, holding 2 grants you 1 point per second, while holding all 3 grants you 2 points per second. What's also different is that when your team or an enemy is capturing an objective, all point gains for that objective stop entirely, rather than only stopping once it's been captured by the enemy team. Signal Chase, meanwhile, is king of the hill, or hardpoint for you Call of Duty players. Being a big fan of objective-based respawn modes, I had a lot of fun playing the Takeover playlist. The final playlist is Rivalry, which contains Cargo Run and Clash Point. Cargo Run is an interesting take on the typical bomb plant defuse mode where the bomb, or a cute little device called Blue Buddy in Concord, is placed in the middle of the map and either team can pick it up and plant it. Clash Point, which I can personally compare to Extraction from Rogue Company, is even more simple. Capture the objective and hold it, or eliminate the enemy team. These were the modes I played the least, but I still had fun while playing them, when I was in a competitive enough mood at least. As of writing this script, the Concord community managers in the official Discord server have stated that the devs are planning to share a Q&A with us soon, so hopefully the Q&A includes adding more game modes, and in particular, more unique ones, over the course of the game's life. So far, I've been talking mostly about what I've liked about Concord during its beta periods. However, after my 26.4 hours of playtime, it was clear to me that the game definitely needs some polishing before its full release in late August. I played the beta on PC, and my biggest issue with Concord on PC is that there were some major performance issues across both beta periods. Now, my rig isn't a high-end one. I have an RTX 4060 GPU, an i5-12400F CPU, and 16GB of RAM. However, the kinds of frame drops I experienced during the beta were extremely bad. When the game was performing well, I'd average about 80 to 90 frames per second, which I was able to achieve at 1440p on mostly higher settings, thanks to the combination of quality DLSS and frame generation. However, during my stream on day 1 of the early access beta, my frames would drop to as low as 15 per second during a gunfight, which made them practically unwinnable. They weren't consistently dropping like this though. Sometimes the FPS would only dip a little bit, and sometimes they wouldn't drop at all. It was just the moments when the frames did start to plummet that I got frustrated with the performance of the game. This was especially the case when the frames would drop during non-intensive tasks, like being on the Freegunner select screen, or spectating a teammate who is just sprinting through the map, no gunfight in sight. My other major issues with the PC beta came from controller input bugs. I don't know if it's because the devs are struggling with making controllers work with the PC version of their game, or if it's some other unknown issue, but on several occasions, inputs were either being cancelled as soon as I made them, or they were being duplicated. For example, sometimes after respawning, if I attempted to sprint, the game would automatically cancel my sprint a second after I activated it. And the issue only seemed to get fixed on death, so I'd have to spend a life not being able to sprint. Similarly, sometimes when I tried to reload a gun, it would cancel the reload animation a second after I started it. In fact, during my last game of the beta, which I unfortunately have no video footage of, I was playing as Lennox and I suffered probably the worst instance of this bug. I ran out of bullets in one of his revolvers, tried to reload it, and it would cancel the reload animation. However, it would also start the reload animation again a second later, then cancel it again. I tried to swap to his other revolver to see if I could avoid the issue that way, but instead it would forcibly swap to my empty revolver and repeat the process. This was genuinely the most annoying bug I ran into during my time with the beta, and I really hope that this problem is resolved before launch, because it was the one bug that made me actually hate the game for a few minutes whenever it happened. Technical issues aside, I think that some of the Freegunners need to be rebalanced a little bit. I understand that character balance is a delicate matter, and this beta was the first time having the game in the hands of the public, but there were definitely good characters and not so good characters. Personally, I had a hard time trying to play as Lark and Deveers, but I consider this more of a skill issue on my part, since I played against some really good Larks and Deveers during the beta. Deveers is the Freegunner I saw the least during the beta though, both on my team and the enemy team. Whether that's because of their kit, or because they're listed in the backup section of the default crew lineup, or some other reason entirely, you may know what I'm talking about, I'm not sure. Another thing I didn't like is that, at least in my opinion, the hipfire flinch in Concord is extremely overkill. If you get shot at while hipfiring, your reticle actually moves off the center of the screen, and quite a lot too. I haven't played a game that does that before, and I'm personally not a fan of it. I can understand ADS flinch, which also exists in Concord, but it's nowhere near as noticeable and impactful on your ability to aim as the hipfire reticle flinch in my opinion. I personally want hipfire reticle flinch to be completely removed from the game, but if it's going to stay, I definitely think the intensity of it should be turned down. I also have some quality of life life changes to suggest that I think would improve the game if implemented. During the beta, the only way to look at and see what crew bonuses did and which classes they were tied to was in the Freegunners menu in the main menu. It's a bit out of the way, so the specifics of crew bonuses aren't obvious for more casual players. My friend, Griffin256, who you should definitely check out, also played the Concord beta, and he whipped up a simple but effective concept for adding the crew bonus symbols and what they do to the left side of the Freegunner select screen, which has a lot of free screen real estate. In this concept, he also added the crew bonus icons to the Freegunner slots in the menu so that you can match the crew bonus icon on a character to their respective crew bonus on the left. This would be a really nice quality of life change to add to the game, especially if the developers want more casual players to know about and take advantage of crew bonuses. Something else I really want to see is a theater mode for Concord. It's personally very shocking to me that there seem to be no plans for an in-game menu where you can watch all the previous cinematic vignettes, especially considering how much effort the team at Firewalk is putting into them. Having them archived on the PlayStation YouTube channel is okay, but asking people to go somewhere like that to rewatch story cutscenes is a bit much if you ask me. It'd be much better if Concord had its own theater mode so that new players coming in after launch can go back and watch the previous cinematic vignettes in-game to catch up if they're interested. It'd also be a nice quality of life option for the people who just want to go back and recap. The last thing I can think of that I want to see in the full release is connected to something I saw in the beta. In the playlist menu, there was an extra option that wasn't available to select. Based on information I found in the How to Play menu, which gives very detailed explanations of almost everything in the game, this unavailable option is either going to be the training option that allows players to acquaint themselves with the mechanics of the game, or, hopefully, it's a custom playlist where you can pick the modes you want to queue for. That's an option I'd love to have, since I'm the kind of player who would queue for takedown, trophy hunt, area control, and signal chase all at once. Before I get to my final thoughts, the devs of Concord recently released the Q&A that I mentioned before, answering the most common questions they were asked during the beta, and I wanted to touch on some of them. First of all, they've confirmed that there will not be a battle pass in Concord. I could not be happier to hear this, because I'm personally getting really tired of battle passes, especially in pay-to-play games like Call of Duty. If you're going to have battle passes in a pay-to-play live service, they should work like the Warbond system in Helldivers 2. In Helldivers 2, Warbond passes never expire, meaning players can work towards them at their own pace. New players don't miss out on any of them, and on top of that, the currency used to buy them can be earned in-game, meaning you don't have to spend a single dollar on them if you're willing to grind. The fact that Concord won't have a battle pass system at all is great news to me, because it means that all of the cosmetics in Concord will either be earned through in-game progression or purchased in the item shop. Speaking of the item shop, my number one hope for Concord's item shop is that there won't be rotations and that you'll instead be able to buy all of the cosmetics in the game at any time. If that isn't going to be the case though, then I want the rotations in the item shop to work like Helldivers 2. That way, all the cosmetics rotate back in every few days and players won't have to wait long to get a cosmetic they missed. The devs have stated that Concord will feature 12 maps at launch, meaning we didn't even play half of the maps that are in the full release during the beta, which is fantastic news. They also stated that there will be, quote, hundreds of items to customize Freegunners, which you can earn just by playing the game, completing jobs, and leveling up your account and characters. So it sounds like there will be less cosmetics in the item shop than there will be cosmetics earned through in-game progression, or at least at launch. Another thing they mentioned in the Q&A is that they're going to be looking at player feedback to influence the kinds of game modes they'll add post-launch, so it'll be interesting to see what we get in Concord's seasonal updates. I definitely have more positive things to say about Concord than negative things after my time with both the early access and open beta periods. I was recently able to refund my pre-order of Concord on Steam so that I could upgrade to the deluxe edition thanks to some advice I got from the Concord Discord server. Needless to say, the beta has more than sold me on the game. Even though I experienced some pretty bad issues and I'm a little worried that they won't be fully addressed by the time the game enters its 3-day early access on the 20th of August, or 21st depending on your time zone, I can definitely say that Concord has the potential to be my favourite multiplayer game of the year. And I don't say that lightly, I really enjoy Helldivers 2, and as of recording this, I'm eagerly anticipating its big Escalation of Freedom update. I still think Helldivers 2 is going to be my multiplayer game of the year, but the devs at Firewalk Studios are really cooking up something awesome here, and I hope that a lot of the naysayers who didn't play the beta will be willing to give the game a second chance when the time is right. I understand that $40 is a lot to ask for a hero shooter in the current climate, but I think the quality of the core game that I saw in the beta is more than worth the price of admission. I'll be streaming myself playing Concord for second streams on my Twitch channel when the game comes out, so if you're interested or you just want to check out my weekly streams, my Twitch link is in the description. Thank you so much to those of you who watched all the way to the end. I know this was a long video. I hope to see you again soon, whether that's on a future YouTube video or Twitch stream. See you later.